Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Charles Schwab Challenge DFS Tactics show. Got a lot to get into. We're going to look at the forecast one last time, figure out who we want to pivot to and fade away from, make some lineups, all of that stuff. I'm quite excited, so let's get straight into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier this week around the previous winners here at Colonial. So if you would like to see the results of my research, give me a follow over at Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards every week for the PGA Tour. That will be no different tonight after the show. So if you would like to see my betting card, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then Twitter also is where I place my daily 3 up, 3 down for baseball. Quick hitting thoughts, 3 players that I like to accrue their value, 3 players that I don't, for the featured daily slate, at least over at DraftKings. So if you're interested in quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over there as well. Then finally, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open as always. Would love to hear from you all. Who are you all targeting this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge? Do you think Scotty Scheffler is the clear and away favorite? Who are you targeting? Who are you pivoting to? And any lineup questions that you have, I am here for. This player versus that player, strategies, all of that stuff. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 Charles Schwab Challenge. And we're going to start, as we always do, take one last look at Windfinder. And the forecast has been pretty darn consistent this week. Not a whole lot of wind. Now, it is Texas. The wind can pick up pretty quickly, but all I can go by is the forecast at the moment. You see the gusts stay down, sustained winds about in the upper single digits to maybe 10 miles an hour, and it's that way all week. Perhaps a little bit gusty tomorrow morning, Friday morning, not tomorrow morning, Friday morning. But I don't see anything in terms of an AM/PM favor, no wave advantage. This is looking like a week to just play the players you think are best suited for Colonial. Now, the wind might pick up a little bit over the weekend. Of course, we don't have the super forecast that far out in advance. You see perhaps a little bit of wind picking up late Saturday, maybe into early Sunday. But for our intents and purposes, trying to get 6 of 6 through for the weekend, it looks pretty darn ideal scoring conditions here at Colonial. Again, no wave advantage. So I'm not factoring that at all into my lineup process for the Colonial this week, and that will be something that I lose to if a wave advantage ends up materializing. But instead, let's go ahead and move on over to Fantasy National, and we normally do a little bit of recap. Whether it's an architect or difficult or anything like that. A lot of times I like to provide just a quick hitting strokes gained total review. But you saw the forecast. The winds are suspected to be down this week. So I don't think the course is going to actually play all that difficult. Now, the course in itself can play that way, but a lot of times the wind has a little bit of effect on that as well. I do see the scores being much more into the average range this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge with no wind. So nothing to do with strokes gained total difficult, nothing to do with wind, no architect. So I'm going to go jump straight into my mixed condition model for the Charles Schwab Challenge that I have made for this week. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about how Strokes gained approach is just the most important shot type here at Colonial. So I've got 20%, a carbon copy from last year's mixed condition model that we took a look at the end of Monday night's show. So 20% in strokes gained approach. I ended up with 10% on fast bent greens. And bent putting is something that has been pretty consistent, or at least putting has been very consistent for the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial. There's no spike performances from your winners. Generally speaking, you might have some individualistic spike performances for players such as Jason Kokrak and whatnot, but really putting has been a pretty darn consistent metric over the years in terms of its importance here. So I do feel a bit stronger this week in terms of looking at historically good bent grass putters, and of course I am favoring fast bent, as that has been the majority of the rounds at Colonial. About 80 to 90% of the green speeds, according to Fantasy National, have been labeled as fast. So 30% of my mixed condition model has been attributed to the two main shot types here at Colonial: 10% putting, 20% approach, 5% in opportunities gained. And I talked a little bit through the week, especially Monday night, how I was going to be looking at birdies gained instead of bogeys avoided. Well, it turns out that when I remove 2018, the furthest year back that I collect, I only go back 5 years. When I removed 2018 to prepare to insert this year's data after the tournament, birdies gained even dropped in terms of importance. So with no scoring, no difficult to par or anything like that, I thought opportunities might be the best way to think about it. And again, I've talked about how I don't like the difficult to par. I think the course is going to play a little bit easier this week. One thing that is consistent, no matter if the wind stays down or is up or anything, fairways have traditionally been very hard to hit here at Colonial, and the greens have been hard to hit because these are small greens. So I've used the fairways difficult to hit filter on two metrics: opportunities gained and good drives gained. And the reason being, I want to see players who are still adept at not only hitting the green, although that is a very important factor, but also give themselves pretty good looks at birdie from the rough if they are indeed in the rough, because fairways are difficult to hit. So 5% in opportunities gained, 15% in good drives gained. Fairways is just a massive factor here at Colonial. If players aren't finding the fairways, I want to see if they are still able to hit the green from the rough. So 15% in good drives gained. No other short game metrics, no around the green, no sand saves, nothing to that effect. So I will be pretty light or pretty cold to anything short game or around the green specific related, if it is indeed a major factor. I am more so trying to focus on the players that are most adept at hitting these small greens, giving themselves plenty of opportunities, and then hopefully converting those opportunities, as opposed to relying on the players that will be playing around the green. 5% in proximity. Now this is still a little bit of a gut feeling on my end, a little bit of a hedge. We saw that the specific proximity length, the most prevalent, 150 to 175, didn't really lead to a whole lot of leaderboard success on Monday evening in the Data Dive show. Proximity, I had it 15% last year, and it was pretty darn predictive in terms of who was going to play well, at least last year. But it's pretty counterintuitive, again, with the fact that these are small greens. You wouldn't think proximity or total proximity is going to matter much. So I only have it at 5%, but this is still a gut feeling that I think total prox is the way to look at Colonial, at least until proven otherwise. 5% in the specific length of par 3s, 175 to 200. 3 of the 4 par 3s fall between 190 and 200 here at Colonial. So a nod to that, 5% in that specific length. 15% in par 4s. I ended up increasing the percentage of par 4s. Again, just feeling very, very confident that par 4 performance is going to be a huge factor this week. And then still splitting out the 350 to 4s and the 400 to 450s, 10% each. Again, par 4s are just a big, big part of Colonial. You have 12 of them here with only 2 par 5s. So the players that have been playing the par 4s the best lately, I want to see, as I think they are going to have an advantage. And then lastly, again, with only 2 par 5s, only 5% in strokes gained total par 5. So there's a look at the mixed condition model for this week. Again, around the green, I'm a little cold too. I don't have a whole lot in there. So if that ends up being a big factor, more so than I think it's going to be, I'm going to be a little cold to that. If fairways are the biggest thing instead of good drives gained, if it's just fairways, if prox doesn't matter, those are some potential downfalls of this mixed condition model. But again, I feel pretty darn good with the emphasis on approach and not necessarily just greens and regulation, but hitting the fairway and hitting the green if the players are in the rough. A little bit of look at some opportunities, especially when fairways are difficult. Quite a bit of putting, more so than I usually like putting in there, but talked about how it's a pretty consistent metric here at Colonial. And then again, just the heavy emphasis in these par 4s with 12 of them on the course. The 350 to 4s are actually, there's only 2 of them, but they actually play a pretty big part because quite a few of these 400 450s are on the shorter end of that bucket and fall into the 350 to 4s a little bit throughout the week. And then 7 of the 12 par 4s fall from 400 450. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for the Charles Schwab Challenge this week. Let's go ahead and move on over to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings for this week. Number 1, I have Tony Finau. Second is Jordan Spieth, Victor Hovland, Davis Riley, and Colin Morikawa are my top 5. Justin Rose, Chris Kirk, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, and Ricky Fowler round out my top 10. So probably the most surprising thing for a lot of people in seeing my initial top 10 is seeing Scotty Scheffler all the way down to 9th. And you see, analytically, he is first. Number 1 in approach, number 1 in par 4s this calendar year. A lot to like with Scheffler. So why is he falling so much? Well, he has not been the best at Colonial. He's been okay, but he has missed the cut once. An average finish of, I believe, 39th or 40th. It's not been fantastic. And part of my research that I put forward early Monday afternoon on social media was the fact that the past 11 winners here at Colonial, all 11 of them made the cut their previous time at Colonial. Didn't have to be the previous year, but the previous time they played, they made the cut. So having seen Scheffler miss a cut already once here at Colonial, he is not immune to the difficulties here. So he's getting hurt by this course value. I mentioned last week for the PGA, the course value had a suppressed or a less amount of value than normal because the PGA Championship rotates its courses. It's the inverse this week. Course value and previous course performance, I believe, is a very, very big factor for Colonial. That's why you don't see very many players near the top who haven't played Colonial. Experience does matter here, and you see a lot of these course values are pretty darn solid. In fact, Scheffler is one of the highest ones. Ricky as well. Tom Hoagie, who has missed the cut 3 of his past 4 times here at Colonial, losing quite a bit in terms of rankings and placement because of that. So the course value has an extra emphasis this week as opposed to last week for the PGA Championship when it had less. So that's why Scotty Scheffler's getting hurt in my rankings. He's also quite clearly the number 1 projected owned player. I would not be surprised if he sits at 30 to 35% this week. And when we go through the price board, you will see that a lot of our fellow contestants seem to be using Scotty Scheffler because there's a lot, and when I say a lot, there are 2 to 3 6K players that are above 10%. So it looks like Stars and Scrubs is the way that a lot of, at least the members at Fantasy National, are building their lineups. So we're going to see if we can't maneuver around that. But otherwise, I mean, not a whole lot surprises me. Jordan Spieth, the number 1 strokes gained total player here the past 5 years. He's played exceptionally well here at Colonial. Tony Finau, much the same. He's 4 for 4 with an average finish of 12th in those 4 tries. Victor Hovland's been good here. Davis Riley, it's only 1 time, but he is still getting vaulted a little bit in the rankings due to that low course value. His 1 attempt last year was a T4. You see the analytics are still very high on him, not as high as some of these others, but I still think Davis Riley will be pretty good this week, and especially at that low ownership. Morikawa, Rose, a former champion. Chris Kirk is a former champion here. So, yeah, a lot that I expected to see in the top 10, with the exception of maybe Scheffler being a little bit lower due to the fact that he has not been the most solid here at Colonial. Evening Pete, thanks for jumping in chat. Always appreciated. Hopefully you're ready for some Charles Schwab Challenge and are ready to add a little bit of bankroll. It's been a pretty rough month for me personally in terms of golf, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how seeing if I can't turn it around and have a positive week for a change. But thanks again for jumping in chat. All right, so there's a look at my top 10. Let's go ahead and just sort on this price board here and figure out where we want to pivot to and pivot away from, and how at least the members at Fantasy National are sorting out the price board. So in the 10Ks, or in the 5 digits, we have 5 players. We have Scotty Scheffler at 11.5, Tony Finau at 10.7, Victor Hovland 10.6, Collin Morikawa 10.4, and Max Homa at 10,100. You see, all of these guys are in my top 10, so in a vacuum, I would be playing all of these guys. However, I think there's one pretty clear player that's getting ignored, and I don't understand why, and it's Max Homa. The cheapest of the 10Ks, he's sitting at 11.5%, so he's not getting ignored completely. But when you take a look at other players around his price point, especially in the 5 digits, and you look at Jordan Spieth, Sung Jae, Justin Rose, these other players in the 9Ks, he's by far the lowest, except for Sam Burns. He's by far the lowest. And you see the course value, it's actually pretty good. He's 3 for 4 here at Colonial. You think about where he generally plays best. The Genesis, the Fortinet. Those places are also tree-lined courses. Genesis is a little bit longer in terms of course distance, but tree-lined, can be difficult to hit the fairways there. Now, Genesis is POA. The Silverado, where they hold the Fortinet, used to be the Safeway. That's bent. I don't know why Max Homa appears to be getting a little bit slept on. He's top 10 in this field in iron play. He's number 2 in par 4s. The bent putting, especially on fast bent, is still very good. You see all these metrics here that are in excellent shade of green. I really like Max Homa this week for DFS purposes, especially since I'm getting such a severe ownership discount on him. Scheffler, what's there to say? I mean, again, he's the number one player. He's the favorite by far in this field. I don't want to discount or count Scheffler out, but 22% per Fantasy National, that's a lot. And I can see that ownership going upwards into the 30 to 35%. I'm not saying that that's a fade, but that is a whole lot of ownership, and you're setting yourself up for a 5v5 immediately going to Scheffler, and it's not like he's immune. Again, I've talked about how he has missed a cut here before. His putting on fast bent is not the best. So while I am sure I will have Scheffler a little bit, I am very comfortable coming to Tony Finau, who's somehow the second least projected owned in the 10Ks. I think Victor Hovland will be fine, although I think he's going to be a little bit more owned than 15%. But I've been very, very comfortable going Homa and Finau if I'm doing a Stars and Scrubs team and trying to dance my way around Scheffler. Again, Tony Finau, 4 for 4, average finish of 12th in the past 5 years here at Colonial. And for as much as his putter can be cold, he's top 20 in this field on fast bent greens. So a lot to really, really like with Tony Finau. I know I was high on him last week. Didn't play the best, but I think that's I think that's not going to be a precursor for this week. I talked about Max Homa. Again, I think Victor Hovland's fine. I think Colin Morikawa is fine. But I do really like Finau and Homa. Evening, Logan. Thanks for jumping in chat. Are you hesitant on Burns' last preference? Haven't talked about the 9Ks yet, but you'll see where his ranking is. So we'll get to that here in a second. Just now wrapping up the 10Ks, but you would be correct in your initial assessment. So in the 10Ks, I'm gonna have to go with Max Homa number 1 in the 10Ks if indeed his ownership is this much further less than the others in the 10Ks. I see no reason why Max Homa won't be very good this week. Again, think about his wins on the tour. The Fortinet or Safeway at Silverado, which is a tree-lined course, bent and POA Anna greens, but bent. And then you have the Genesis, that's tree-lined. Fairways can get difficult to hit. I don't see any reason why Max Homa won't be very good this week. So give me the ownership discount and the price discount on Homa in the 10Ks. I'll go Tony Finau second, even though he is number 1 in my rankings. I'll go Tony Finau second in the 10Ks just because of Max Homa's absurd projected ownership. Oh boy, I'll probably go Scheffler third, although that is a whole lot of ownership. I'll go Hovland 4th and Morikawa 5th. But it's a pretty clear top 2 for me in the 10Ks. And if I've been building Stars and Scrubs lineups, I've been comfortable dancing around Scheffler and loading up on these two. All right, let's move to the 9s. We have Jordan Spieth, Sam Burns, Sung Jae, Justin Rose, Tommy Fleetwood, Chris Kirk, and Siwoo Kim. So Sam Burns is your defending champion. But you see some of the metrics here. His iron play has been pretty horrendous lately, to be fair. He gets very, very wayward off the tee, and that is not a very good recipe for Colonial. Now, the putting can always save him, and I mentioned this at Oak Hill last week. Since those were bent greens, I mean, I would think of it much more with Bermuda Burns and all that, but he's still a very, very good putter on bent. The putter can always save him, but he's got some atrocious looking metrics. I mean, his short par 4 performance, very, very bad. Again, the good drives gained, especially when fairways are difficult to hit. His proximity, this calendar year has been pretty horrendous. So you are correct, Logan, in the sense that I'm beyond cautious. I'm not going near Sam Burns. I will lose to Sam Burns even though he's the defending champion. I'm just nowhere near there. I will let others take that risk. It doesn't look like a whole lot of others are. But this is uniqueness that I do not want to grab. I think I will grab enough with Max Homa. Jordan Spieth, again, you have to figure he's going to be popular. This is chalk I'm not going to be able to get away from. He just loves Colonial. 5 for 5. No finish outside the top 35 for Jordan Spieth. Damn near top 10 in irons in this field. He's top 10 in par 4s. Second in the 400 to 450 par 4s. There's a lot to like with Jordan Spieth. I don't see any reason why he won't play well. Like Sam Burns, another fade for me in the 9 case is going to be Tommy Fleetwood, and he's the second most projected owned player, and that's a lot of the reason why I am fading him. That's a whole lot of ownership and a lot of reservations that I still have with Tommy Fleetwood. Again, when fairways are difficult to hit, he does not find the fairway or find the green all that often. You see it's even worse than Sam Burns. His bent putting, not the best. His short par 4 performance, just like Sam Burns, not very good. So Tommy Fleetwood, I will lose to Tommy Fleetwood this week if he ends up playing well. I know he's popular. I know a lot of people have been backing him to win the tournament. I just can't get behind this chalk when I know I'm going to be using Jordan Spieth, when I know I'm going to be using Justin Rose. I'll lose to Tommy Fleetwood. I have reservations about the quality of his game, and you see, or quality of his game and how it fits to Colonial. He's a world-class player. Let me rephrase that. But he is just like Scheffler in the sense that his course value is one of the worst for the players up here in this area of the price board. I just don't like Tommy Fleetwood, and a lot of it has to do with the projected ownership. I can't get there knowing I'm going to be using Spieth and Justin Rose. That last round from Burns looked horrible, as we usually happening. I'm going to be honest, I didn't see much of Burns's PGA, so I really didn't see a whole lot of specific things about the PGA because I was pretty much done on the PGA after Thursday with how poor my PGA went. But yeah, Burns hasn't been in the best of form lately at all, and you see that with these metrics that are 2023 and forward. Like his par 4 performance is okay, but it's not great. His iron play has been horrendous. So I got a lot of concerns with Burns, even though he's the defending champion. And again, I'm fading Fleetwood. A lot of it just to do with the ownership, because I'm already taking chalk in Spieth and Rose. Which, speaking of, Justin Rose, a former champion here, he has played extremely well here, coming off a fantastic performance at the PGA Championship. Hits plenty of fairways, hits plenty of greens. His bent putting, 5th. He doesn't have a bad statistic. This is his worst statistic, and he's still top 60. Bruce, thanks for jumping in chat. Finding this one of the harder weeks and deciding which chalk I'm willing to eat. Fleetwood, a great example. See, yeah, and that's why I am comfortable going away from Scotty Scheffler a little bit more too, because I'm liking Finau. I like Homa. It's not that I hate Scotty Scheffler, but when you're seeing 22% per Fantasy National, I would not be surprised to see Scheffler 30 to 35%, and that's just setting yourself up for a 5v5. I'm confident in finding other values elsewhere on the price board. So I agree with you in that regard as to finding which chalk you want to eat. For me, I'm choosing to go with Rose and Spieth. Sungjae I think would be okay, Not great, but okay. I think that's fair in terms of ownership. Chris Kirk also should be good. A former champion here. He's a little bit less owned than Sungjae. I think I would go to Chris Kirk before I go Sungjae. I think both players are good in that regard. But in the 9Ks, I'm generally gravitating towards Spieth and Rose, knowing that's the chalk. I ended up cashing with 4-6, Vincent, Taryn, Koepka, Cantley. Yeah, you mentioned that on Sunday, which happy for you, because I had one lineup that cashed out of the 17 that I played. It was just a horrendous week for me. I was nowhere. I mean, I mentioned, fade Brooks or ignore Brooks at your risk. And I always ignore Brooks because he never rates out well for me. And the times he doesn't play well. So Brooks is a bit of an anomaly for me. But I knew I accepted that going into the PGA Championship that I would lose to Brooks. Just like this week, I accept that I will lose to Scheffler. I will lose to Burns. And I have that pretty much set from Sunday. But the ownerships here, especially on Scheffler, really confirm it. And Fleetwood, for that matter. So yeah, elsewhere in the 9Ks, like I said, I mentioned Chris Kirk. I think Chris Kirk's going to be fine. Second in par fours and how important they are here at Colonial. Not the best bent grass putter, but again, he's won here, so he at least can putt these greens. The individual performances on the par fours are great. Good at proximity. I mean, elite in proximity. So nothing wrong with Chris Kirk. Finally, in the 9K, Siwoo, I'm just not there with Siwoo. I know he's in the top 30 in my rankings, but he's not played Colonial well. He can get pretty. I can't say wayward. He just doesn't hit enough fairways and or greens for my liking. However, when his irons are on, as you can see, they're generally really good. He's also not the best at par fives. Dang it, it's right off your screen. He's not the best at par fives, which I know they are suppressed in value this week, but you still have to take advantage of them. He's not the best at them, so not as excited about Siwoo. So in the 9Ks, it's the chalk that I'll be eating in the 9Ks, and that's a lot of the reason why I like Homa in the 10s, because I'll be using a lot of, I'll be using a lot of these three players if I could ever get them highlighted. I'll be using a lot of these three players, and I know that they're going to be pretty chalky. So there's a look at the 9Ks, and again, Sungjae I think is fair. He's generally pretty popular though, so I can take it or leave it with Sungjae. You see me; he's 11th in my rankings. It's not like I hate the idea of playing Sungjae. I'm just more confident in Chris Kirk and Rose and Spieth than I am in Sungjae. All right, moving to the 8s. Ricky Fowler, 10th in my rankings, but he's got one of the higher course values up here as well. He's really popular. Mentioned this in PGA Championship week. I really thought I was going to be using Ricky Fowler, as late as Monday evening from the show. And then I start seeing his projected ownership ends up being a fade, and it worked out. One of the few things that worked out at the PGA Championship. Colonial, I think, sets up a little better for him than Oak Hill does, but this is still a lot of ownership. So be wary of Ricky. Now, he's top 5 in this field in iron play, 10th in putting, 5th in the short par 4s. There's a lot to like here, but that is a lot of ownership. But I think I'd be much more comfortable eating the Ricky Fowler chalk than I would the Tommy Fleetwood chalk this week. So if you're debating on those two chalky plays, I would go with Fowler, but I would still much prefer Rose over those two anyway. It kind of like Sungjae. I mean, he's going to be popular, so if you're comfortable eating that chalk, I don't think it's a bad play. but there's a lot of other values that I like. Hence why I've been harping on Homa and Finau and building that kind of stars and scrubs lineup. And when we get to the 7s and especially the 6s, I see a lot of potential down there. So I don't feel like I have to eat the chalk with Ricky Fowler and some of these other players. Henley, I mean, again, good drives gained, number one player. He gives himself plenty of opportunities. Is he going to convert them? He's one of the worst on fast bent greens. He's been not the best here, so I'm not crazy about it. Denny McCarthy, always a threat with the putter. His irons have been better. They have been better. But you see, even when fairways are difficult to hit, someone like McCarthy, who you would think needs to be pretty accurate, he's not. He's nowhere near like I'm going to skip ahead to like Brendan Todd, who's just an ultimate fairway finder. Like, McCarthy can struggle at finding fairways, hitting greens, and he doesn't give his putter enough chances. So I've got a little bit of concern with McCarthy. I want no part of Tom Hoge. He is 3 for 4 in missing the cut here at Colonial. There is something about this course that Tom Hoge just does not like. I understand he's 14th in my rankings. I'm going purely on the course or prior course form. I don't want any part of Tom Hoge. He's not fit for Colonial. Something doesn't fit his eye here. I skipped Cam Davis. I'll come back to him. Brian Harman has really played this event well. So if you are a big believer in course form, take a long look at Brian Harman. Not in love with it, but at 6.5%, I think it's a worthy look. Jaeger's been in fine form. I wouldn't get too hung up on the course value. It's only one time. So you see he's been just in fine form. Top 20 in irons, 10th in par 4s. The putter, as with a lot of players, can come and go. I don't think Jaeger's a bad play, but kind of like Ricky, he's fairly popular. So a lot of, at least the members of Fantasy National, are gravitating to there. A lot of people asked about Minwoo Lee last week. He doesn't rate out well for me, kind of like Brooks, and he played very well at the PGA Championship. So if you are a Minwoo Lee believer, this could be an interesting play, especially at how low ownership he is. But again, I'm just going by the metrics. He doesn't rate out well in a lot of the aspects that I am looking at this week. So take that with what you will on Minwoo Lee. KH Lee is another thing. Even though he is a 2-time champion just up the road at the Byron Nelson, he does not play Colonial very well. So I would have my reservations on KH Lee, which means I've only really not talked about one name, and that's Cam Davis. He's pretty popular, which is a shame. You've been liking SH lately, SH Kim, because if that's the case, I don't hate it. Or was that a typo and you meant KH? But at least in terms of for Colonial, I don't like KH. SH Kim, we can talk about, but let's talk. SH Kim. Yeah, we can talk about that. It could be interesting. Let's talk about Cam Davis. I've been waiting for Cam Davis's breakout this year for a while now, and I think this is the time of the year where you're going to start seeing signs. Now, yes, top 10th PGA, that's easy to say the week after. The reason why I talk about Cam Davis and waiting to this part of the year for him is basically all about one thing. His heavily preferred surface is bent. His win at the Rocket Mortgage was on bent. He's better at easier courses, but he is starting to contend more and more when it's difficult. You see the par 4s that are short. Very, very good. He's also 8th in opportunities when fairways are difficult to hit. Now, yes, the proximity is going to have to be a lot better, so on and so forth. This is the time of the year that I'm going to start really believing in Cam Davis. I've got a win ticket on Cam Davis. So if this is chalk that you are not comfortable with, then there's enough reason not to be there. And in fact, I can accept having my exposure to Cam Davis be a win ticket and be a little less on him in DFS. But anytime you're on bent, particularly on a course that really favors these shorter par 4s, you really need to think about Cam Davis. So I'm expecting his breakout to be pretty soon. I'm not saying it's this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays well moving forward into the bent grass portion of the PGA Tour season. So if I'm anywhere in the 8Ks, it's generally been Cam Davis. I don't mind throwing Brian Harman into a lineup because of the prior course form. I don't mind throwing Jaeger into a lineup due to the form that he's in. But if I've been coming to the 8Ks, and it's not very often, if I've been coming to the 8Ks, it's generally Cameron Davis. Maybe a touch of Ricky, but that's a whole lot of chalk, and I know I'm eating chalk in rows and speed, so I'm a little bit more shy about that. All right, let's go into the upper sevens. And there's a few players that I really want to talk about, mainly in the low sevens, but there's a couple in the upper sevens. Let's talk about Kurt Kitayama. He had a fantastic PGA Championship. The irons are always there. And he gives himself plenty of opportunities. He's had a little bit of a breakout this year. I would say his breakout really was last year when he finished second a couple of times. But the winner at the Arnold Palmer, so you know he can win when it's difficult. His putter has to cooperate, but I think Kitayama, especially at 6.5% or so, is going to be pretty good value for you. Brendan Todd is just built for Colonial. You see fairways. He's a fairway finder, top 5 in bent putting. He actually plays 400, 450 par 4s pretty well too. The thing with Brendan Todd is he's not going to sneak up on anybody. A lot of consistent DFS golf players will know about Brendan Todd and Colonial. So he's not going to be as unique as you're hoping, but Brendan Todd should be a pretty good play. Zayden's getting a lot of love. I mean, I can see it, I guess. Number 1 putter on bent. Very good at proximity. I get it, but that's a whole lot of chalk to eat. Instead, if I'm up here, Alex Smalley. Again, when greens matter, think of Alex Smalley. Top 20 in irons or 21st, top 25, good drives gained, top 20 in opportunities when fairways are difficult to hit. So I think Alex Smalley should be okay. Patrick Rogers, also pretty darn interesting this week, and I'm generally not a believer in Patrick Rogers because he's failed me, I don't know, however many times. But Rogers has played Colonial pretty darn well as well. So I don't hate the idea of Patrick Rogers. But yeah, in the upper sevens, I really like Kitayama. Ben On is kind of interesting as well. I'm just much more of a believer in Kitayama than I am in Ben On, but you see they're back-to-back in my rankings. I really like Brendan Todd. This is a little bit of chalk that I'll eat. He's just not going to be as unique as you would think the name Brendan Todd would be. So be aware of that. Let's move to the low sevens where I've been finding a lot of players that I really like. Start with the guy that's number 4 in my rankings, Davis Riley. Hits plenty of greens and fairways when he needs to. He's number 3 at opportunities. when fairways are difficult to hit. It's top 10 in proximity. Now, the course value is a little bit misleading. He's only played Colonial once, but it was a tie for 4th. I think Davis Riley is going to be pretty good this week. So that's one of the 2 or 3 players that I will lose to if he does not play well. I'll lose if Tommy Fleetwood plays extremely well. Probably lose if Scheffler plays extremely well. I will lose if Davis Riley does not play well. I'm a believer in Davis Riley this week. Somebody else is Mav McNeely. Again, however you feel about the prior injury, whether you think he's fully healthy or not, it's always a guesswork. Number 8 in putting on fast bent. Again, gives himself plenty of opportunities. Proximity's got to be better, obviously. He's good at these specific length of par 4s. And at 2.5%, Maverick McNeely is a pretty darn good player to get at 2.5%. So I know the injury bug has hit him a little bit this year. If you're scared off with that, I understand. I'll probably be willing to invest a little bit with McNeely. A lot of your fellow contestants are gravitating towards Eric Cole. I understand why. I'm going to advise you to fade him. One, he has never played Colonial, and previous course experience really does matter here at Colonial. You see, he has a pretty difficult time with fairways and greens when fairways are difficult to hit. The putter isn't the best on fast bent. So I think because of the fact that he's never played Colonial, I'm willing to let others take that risk, and I'm going to find a whole lot of uniqueness elsewhere. The one player that I really want to highlight for you all in the lower 7s is Andrew Putnam. 8, almost 9%, so it's a little bit on the, I can't say chalky side, but he's not going to be extremely unique. But anytime off the tee doesn't really matter, think about Andrew Putnam. He plays shorter courses well. You see, he's been pretty good with the irons this calendar year. He's fine on good drives gained. The par 4s need work. Absolutely. He's not been good at par 4s this calendar year. But he's good on bent. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, or when I was going through my mixed condition model, I'm pretty light on around the green in my mixed condition model. Andrew Putnam's really good around the green. So if it does end up mattering a lot more, give Andrew Putnam a whole lot of consideration in your lineups this week. I really like the way he sets up. And you can see the course value. He's played very well here. There are 2 players that have not played Colonial that I would be willing to dip my toe in or, use a little bit. One is Sam Stevens. Again, irons, very good. Lots of line movement on Putnam this week. Okay. I have not really seen much. I wasn't particularly interested in terms of wagers. I just figured he was going to be pretty unique, and he's been somebody I've been kind of targeting this week for DFS, and the rankings have kind of borne that out, for lack of better terms, because I knew he'd always played well here. Sam Stevens, or for players that haven't played Colonial, if I'm willing to use a player or 2 that hasn't played, I'm much more going to Sam Stevens than I am Eric Cole. Much better form, in my opinion. Much better form, better approach, good drives gained. He's also a good putter on bent from what he has shown in his short time on the PGA Tour. And the proximity, very, very good. He takes advantage of par 5s. Just off your screen, 17th. Hostler and Harmon also moved a bunch. I understand Harmon because he has just played very, very well here. Hostler. Interesting. I would have thought he would have played here. He's not in great form. It's probably around the fact that he's a short game player in the putter. But I'm not there with Hostler. I do want to Texas narrative. Yeah. As I was getting ready to say it, it popped up there on chat. Yeah, Texas narrative also works. I do want to hit S.H. Kim for Logan here. He's not rated all that high. I would have a little bit of concern again regarding the fact that he's never played here. The irons, I think the irons are better than what this is showing. The par 4s are good. I think where S.H. Kim's probably going to get into trouble is if he doesn't hit enough fairways to give his putter a good look. He's also been really bad with total procs. I don't hate it. But if I'm going to be using a first-time starter at Colonial, I'm much more leaning towards Sam Stevens, especially since it's $100 less. But I don't think the irons are this bad for S.H. Kim. So I don't hate it. And he's going to be really unique. So I don't hate it, Logan. But I do think there are potential pitfalls there. Interesting. Now you got me thinking about S.H. Kim maybe once in a lineup. Let's see. No one really else in the at 7,000 even. You see a lot of these course values are pretty bad, with the exception of Joel Damon. And Joel Damon, I mean, I don't know where his game is. He's been essentially just nowhere. He's in no form at all. I know I've been very, very high on Vincent Norman, but you see a lot of the metrics that I think are going to play really, really well at Colonial. He's not very good at. So Norman I'm actually off of this week, even though I really have backed him quite a bit lately. Kind of off of Norman. All right, let's go into the 6Ks. And there's a few players that I really do want to mention for you all. About 3 or 4 of them. Unfortunately, a couple of them are pretty popular. Nate Lashley at 6,900. Top 10 in iron play in this field. He's top 10 in irons this calendar year. The putter is not this bad. He's just had a bad little bit of time lately. The putter is not this bad. You see number 2 in total procs. Also top 15 in both the specific length of par 3s and par 5s. So give a look at Nate Lashley. He's going to be a little bit popular at 7.7%, or at least projected. But I don't hate Nate Lashley at all. Look, Michael Block's a great story. He actually ends up rating out 36th. I'm sure I'll have him once, but I can't advocate putting him or making him a staple. He has been pretty bad at good drives gained whenever or in the rounds that we've accrued. The short par 4s he hasn't played all that well either. So, I mean, it's a great story. I'll use him once just to say I used him, but I'm not in love with it. Ben Martin, somebody else that I really like, and you see he's getting quite a bit of love. 11% for a 6K, so very, very chalky. But 14th analytically. He's top 20 in irons, 10th in par 4 performance this calendar year. And as I talk about, the putter can always come and go. I like Ben Martin. I don't like the ownership. I really do like Ben Martin this week. I do not like the ownership. He's getting a whole lot of love. Akshay Bhatia is getting a lot of love for good reason. He's in great form. I'm actually going to fade Bhatia this week. For a lot of the same reasons like Eric Cole and some others. He can have trouble hitting fairways. And he doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities when fairways are difficult to hit. And if he's not in play, he's not going to be able to, scramble his way. The proximity is not going to matter if he's just not in play. So there's a lot of reason to like him. I'm going to let others take that chance at 11.5% and go with the fact that he can get pretty wayward. Instead of Batia at 67, Dylan Wu's also at 10% at 66. Take a look at Mark Hubbard. I like Mark Hubbard this week. He's always in play. You see the good drives game when it's difficult to hit. The putter, good on fast bent. I really like Mark Hubbard as a thought at 6,600. I really like Carson Young at 63, but he's pretty popular. So just like a little bit with Ben Martin, although Martin's more popular, I like the player. I don't like the ownership, but I do think Carson Young's the second player that I would be comfortable giving a thought to using, having never played Colonial. The last player that I want to mention or to highlight for you all at the literal minimum of 6K, and I mentioned it Monday evening, it's Rory Sabatini. He doesn't rate out well at all, even in my rankings. It's all about the prior course form. He is 5 for 5 at making the cut the past 5 years here at Colonial. I think in his career he's 12 for 14 at making the cut at Colonial at the literal minimum. And you see a lot of it is going to be with the short game. Putter. Again, I don't have a lot of around the green. This is completely a play on prior course form. So if you don't value that much, or you are scared away by the current form he's in, I get it. But Rory Sabatini, time and again, has shown that he plays Colonial fairly well. An average finish of 32nd the past 5 years here at Colonial. All right, there's a look at the price board. Boy, I rambled on quite a bit there. All right, let's make some lineups. Let's start with tiers, and then we'll start making some classic lineups and prepare your all's questions for the end of the show, and we can do kind of a rapid fire segment with that. For those who play tiers contests, in tier 1, you have Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, and Victor Hovland. Well, Scotty Scheffler is going to be the overwhelming chalk, I would think. So give me Tony Finau in tier 1, hoping to gain a little bit of uniqueness in tier 1 and still just as likely to win, in my opinion. Tier 2, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, Jordan Spieth, Sam Burns, and Justin Rose. Well, Jordan Spieth's probably the best pick. He's going to be the most chalky. Justin Rose is also a solid pick. I like Homa and I like Morikawa. I think for tiers, I think I have to choose Spieth. And I'm comfortable doing that, even taking the chalk because I took Tony Finau in tier 1. I think Jordan Spieth is the choice in tier 2, so give me Spieth. Homa is quite interesting if you want to be very unique. I also don't hate Justin Rose either. So I would go Spieth, Homa if you need the uniqueness, Rose for maybe a contrarian play. Morikawa should be okay too, but I think he's 4th of these 5. Tier 3, Sungjae, Tommy Fleetwood, Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, and Russell Henley. It's really a one-man tier for me in this tier. It's Chris Kirk. I don't mind Sungjae, but give me Chris Kirk. I think he'll be pretty unique compared to Tommy Fleetwood. He actually might be unique compared to Sungjae as well. So give me Chris Kirk in tier 3. Tier 4, Ricky Fowler, Denny McCarthy, Cam Davis, Tom Hoagie, Minwoo Lee, K.H. Lee, and Stephen Yeager. Ooh. Well, I think Ricky would be okay. I imagine he'll just be pretty chalky, but I think he'll play well this week. I do. I'm probably gonna have to go with Cam Davis, but I don't like it. Stephen Yeager could also be pretty interesting, but give me Cam Davis in tier 4. I'll do the home run. I'll be willing to accept the all or nothing from tier 4 and give me Cam Davis. Tier 5, Brian Harman, Taylor Moore, Ben On, Kurt Kitayama, Brendan Todd, Harris English, and Christian Bezadenhout. If you are a huge believer in prior course form, take a look at Brendan Todd or Brian Harman. If you want uniqueness with a lot of upside, take Kitayama. I will probably go Brendan Todd, although he's going to be the most chalky in this tier. But give me Brendan Todd in tier 5. I'll combine the course, the prior course form with the putter, and just give me Brendan Todd. But I think Kitayama is quite interesting, and Brian Harman's also a worthwhile consideration if you are big in prior course form. And finally, tier 6. We have Sam Stevens, Sepp Straka, Joel Damon, Nate Lashley, Michael Block, Ches Reavie, and Luke List. Let me spin a little bit out of the way so you all can see. Look, if you're one to root for Michael Block, I don't hate it. I wouldn't do it, but if you want to root for Michael Block, go ahead. For me, I'm between Nate Lashley and Sam Stevens. I think Nate Lashley's a safer play because Stevens has not played Colonial. Oh boy. Give me Sam Stevens. Again, I'm not in love with it, but give me Sam Stevens. Part of me feels like a jerk for not taking Michael Block, but I just can't do it. If you want to root for him, go ahead. All right, let's make some chalky lineups here. See how our fellow contestants are navigating this price board and see where we can find our uniqueness. So, clearly, our fellow contestants are generally gravitating towards Scotty Scheffler. And then probably, I'll go with Tommy Fleetwood. They could be trying to squeeze in a Jordan Spieth, but I'm going to go with Tommy Fleetwood. And in the 6Ks, we've seen that our fellow contestants aren't afraid to build a Stars and Scrubs lineup, whether they're going Dylan Wu or Batia, maybe even as far down as Carson Young. But I'm going to use Batia since I'm off of him. He's also the highest in here. This also could be Ben Martin. Take your pick at where you think our fellow contestants are going. I'm going to go with Batia for them, which means they have about 7,500. I highly doubt they're doing 2 6Ks. They might be. But instead, looks like they're going Eric Cole down here. And that leaves them in the upper 7s range, which is Bezadenhout and Griot. They could also be doing like a Hayden Buckley. 81 is Jaeger, who's getting a little bit of love. It won't be as chalky as I could make it. But there's a look at potentially a lineup that you might see, especially if they're coming into the 6s, which it looks like most of, at least Fantasy National is doing. 15%, pretty darn high. Another way this could be going would be Bezadenhout and who's the other one? Griot. So there you go. So 15.9, almost 16% if they balance out those 2 remaining slots. And again, move this around how you will. That might be Ben Martin. This might be Hayden Buckley. But there's a general gist of a Scotty Scheffler looking type lineup that you will probably see in your big GPPs. If we're trying to build a chalky lineup that's not Scotty Scheffler, we'll go with Jordan Spieth, Justin Rose, and looks like our fellow contestants can maneuver this quite easily. So we'll bottom them out at Eric Cole. I know I try to use different names, but I mean there's really nobody else in the bottom half of the 7s except for Eric Cole and maybe Hayden Buckley. So I'll use Eric Cole. Bezadenhout's also getting quite a bit of love there. And this is your 8K range in players. Brendan Todd. getting love, and then 8,100 again is Jaeger. So there looks to be a more balanced approach to a lineup. If our fellow contestants are ignoring the 10Ks, probably using Spieth and Rose, Spieth and Tommy Fleetwood, Spieth and Ricky, and maneuvering as such there. All right, let's try to navigate this chalk, shall we? I'm going to save the most common way I've been approaching this for last, which is Finau and Homa. So if we're going to try to build a balanced, unique lineup, it's going to be a little difficult because I'm not there with Sungjae, excuse me. I'm not there with Sam Burns. Rose, very chalky. Fleetwood, very chalky. I don't know if you want to start your team with Chris Kirk. Because there's not a lot in the 8s that I like, except for maybe Cam Davis. So really, you're going to have to choose the one player you kind of like in the upper 9s. And then Chris Kirk would be the pivot off of Tommy Fleetwood, off of Sungjae. I'm just going to use Jordan Spieth. I know it's chalky, but if I'm trying to build a balanced lineup, I am more so trying to do it in the Spieth, Kirk, maybe a Cam Davis. Like I said, I've got a win ticket on him, so I'm much more comfortable being away from him in DFS. And then kind of loading up in these bottom 7s and leaving a little bit of money on the table. I've talked quite a bit about Andrew Putnam. Don't mind him at all. I mentioned Mav McNeely. However you feel about the injury, he has played Colonial well. Davis Riley, somebody else that I'm pretty high on this week, and that leaves you 7,900 for one player. I'm going to use Smalley, try to get as unique as possible. It's 11%, a little bit higher than I like. Again, that's just using Spieth, who's the third most projected owned player. If you're comfortable using a Sam Burns, or if you're comfortable maybe starting your lineup with Chris Kirk and then moving your way down, you can obviously come lower off of this projected ownership. But that looks to be kind of the shell of a balanced lineup that I've been building this week. But my go-to this week has been Stars and Scrubs. And again, I can only go by the projected ownerships, but Tony Finau and Max Homa being the two most unique 10Ks as of right now, I am very confident in both of those players heading into the weekend with a chance to win the tournament, which shows you I've been going into the 6Ks. I don't know if I'm willing to do a double 6K. Of course, I mentioned Rory Sabatini. If you're not comfortable going that low, take a look at Mark Hubbard, Carson Young. I'll do Mark Hubbard since he's at 66. Nate Lashley at 6,900 also could work. But again, there's a slew of players in the low 7s that I've been gravitating towards. Andrew Putnam, Sam Stevens. I'll use Sam Stevens since we haven't thrown him in one. Thanks to Logan's mention earlier, S.H. Kim, kind of interesting after looking at some of his metrics. I think the irons are better than this. He's very good at par 4s, or at least he has been this calendar year. S.H. Kim could be somebody to perhaps take a look at. Mav McNeely, even Billy Horschel for that matter. He's been in terrible, terrible form, but he's played Colonial fairly well. He generally hits enough fairways, especially when they're difficult. Don't hate the idea of maybe looking at a Billy Horschel, but in all honesty, if I've been doing this, I'll go Andrew Putnam as well. do double 71s. It gives me an 84, which is Minwoo Lee. I'm not there. Maybe you are. Brian Harmon for the prior course performance. That's a sub 9% lineup, let alone 10%. Somebody else, Kurt Kitayama. Somebody I'm pretty high on this week. Another 8.5%. If you want to get a little bit more, quote, sure, Brendan Todd. He's still at that 9.5%, under the 10% magic number, to where this is probably a unique lineup in your big GPPs. So that's what I have for you. I'll stick around for a couple of minutes if there are any questions. Who have you wagered? If you've made any wagers. One of mine, Cam Davis. I've also made another wager and a top 20. Might do another one, I'm not sure. But I've been really kind of focused on the DFS as opposed to the wager side this week. But if there are any questions, I'll be happy to stick around for a minute or two. Been a fun show, though. I appreciate everybody jumping in chat, even though the past month has been not the best for me. We're hoping to turn that around here at the Charles Schwab. Otherwise, you put it in the comments or in chat. Who do you think wins? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for jumping in chat, Logan. Always appreciated. If you use SHChem, let me know. Now you've got me thinking about maybe considering him a little bit. Who do you think wins this week? Is it Scotty Scheffler? Do you think Victor Hovland? Do you think it's somebody that nobody's really talking about? Would love to hear from you all on that regard. But as always, this weekend, over the weekend, in chat or on social media, let me know how you do. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. Weren't able to do much of that this past week for the PGA Championship. Sounds like a lot of the community had similar type success or lack thereof that I did for the PGA Championship. So hopefully we're able to turn this around for the Charles Schwab. P and Logan and Bruce, thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. You'll be using SH, thinking of a sub 10 golfer will win. Okay, yeah. If I'm not picking Scotty Scheffler to win, I'm probably going to pick Tony Finau. But there's a lot of good options up there for sure. I'm surprised Jordan Spieth's not 10K, to be honest with you. I would have thought he would have been a 10K considering this is Colonial. But thanks to you three for jumping in chat. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. It's always appreciated. Enjoy what I do looking at sports statistics and trying to win a little money in the process. Quick update for the week. There will be no Friday night chill stream this Friday. Apologies, but I've got plans for this Friday evening, so no Friday night chill stream, but I will still continue to put out my daily baseball content over on Twitter, 3 Up, 3 Down. So if you're wanting to see quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter. I will still have that out, but no Friday night chill stream this week. So for all of the wagers you have made this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.